All guests on ZASLOW Show 2.0 brought to us by the official beer of the program, Johnny Cuba, European roots with that Caribbean soul, a refreshing German lager in a can. Pick up a six-pack of Johnny Cuba, your local Sedanos, Presidente, Winn-Dixie. Go to johnnycuba.us. You could use the Johnny Locator and find out where the closest six-pack of Johnny Cuba is to you. Make sure you always drink responsibly, and don't forget Johnny Cuba's mantra, stay tranquilo. Joining us now, our pal is Israel Gutierrez. Israel, always good to see you. We have the Eastern Conference Finals set tonight. Celtics, Pacers. Let me first ask you, though, both conferences, we have the 1 versus the 6, and we have the 3 versus the 5. What do you take from that? Is this a sign of things to come, you think? Like, are we going to start seeing a little bit more parity in the league? Also, this is the 6th straight year that we're going to have a new champion, not back-to-back. What do you make of all that?
Yeah, I think it's basically sort of the dissolving of the super teams to where there's just more talent spread out throughout the league. There's more groups of players and coaches that think, hey, even if we are on the road in a playoff setting, we can still execute what we need to do and win these games. There's just more belief in that than there was before, whether it be because, you can see 20-point leads disappear in this league all of a sudden like nothing, or whether it's just, like I said, sort of the the league sort of spreading out a lot of the talent. And I think it started a few years back even. I mean, I think you look back at the Heat as a 5 seed, right? They were the 5 seed when they went to the finals in the bubble. You look at them as an 8 seed going to the finals. You look at this year and a team like the Dallas Mavericks, for example. Do they seem like a team with Kyrie and Luka that needs a regular season, a 60-win regular season to then believe that they can win a 7-game series? No. They know what they have. They know that if their role players around them can just find it at the right time, then they're going to be able to roll probably past anybody, they believe, because they have the talent to match them. And so that's basically what happened with Dallas late in the season. They were relatively healthy. They had those Gafford and PJ Washington trades. And all of a sudden they look like a team that's built perfectly around, Luka and Kyrie. So I just think it's such a long season. The idea that you need to confirm to yourself over and over and over again, hey, we can win with this group, with this style. I don't think you need that. And I think there are teams that like Boston who are just too good to not win 60 games, and they're going to be the top seed. But when you need to grind it out to win, when you're not clearly above and better than everybody else, then yeah, you only need short stretches of sort of confirmation that you're good, and then get me into the playoffs. Doesn't matter what seed.
Okay, so I think that grinded out stuff matters. I think you need to be tested at some point, likely in the regular season, but also preferably in the playoffs. So that brings us to tonight with the Pacers and Celtics. This Celtic team has not been tested whatsoever in the regular season or in the postseason. I mean, they won 64 games because anytime you're that talented, you're going to win a lot of games out of 82. But yep. Have they played a single close game this postseason? Maybe one? Do the Pacers have a shot this series?
I think they have a shot because they have the type of offense that can stay with Boston, or at least force Boston to have to hit a lot of those threes and really execute, because, they're going to run. They're going to, and it's not just run and shoot threes. They're going to run and get to the rim. Like, I think they lead the league in paint points. And so it's not because they just send it into Miles Turner and just let him go to work in the post. It's because they get to the rim on the fast break, or they do it in the half court because they've got you so spread out. And so that, I think, is the type of team that can really test the mental fortitude of the Celtics. It's different than the way the Heat did it. The Heat did it by keeping it close and just, really playing physical and tough and finding, those tough 2-point baskets. I think where the Pacers do it is just by saying, hey, we're in this game. We are going to run our way into it or run away from you. It's a lot of pressure on you to maintain what you're doing, Boston. And I think that if they are this mentally weak team that everybody thinks they are, that's where it's going to come through. It's, hey, we can't keep up with this team that keeps pressing us offensively because before it was Cleveland or Miami. It's like, hey, even if we struggle offensively, that team might score 100. We're not going to have to score 110, 120 to beat them. The Pacers might get in a situation where they have a couple games, 115, 120, and force Boston to have to execute and make their shots. And I think that's the only thing people are picking against Boston. The only way they're picking against Boston is the mental thing. And so if they're in some of these close games, but they might not be in any close games. They might just shoot their way to every game being a double-figure win, and they don't even have to think about the 1 or 2 losses that they had in the series.
Now, for tonight, is this one of those games where, if Indiana's going to steal one, it's got to be game 1? Do you feel that way?
No, because Boston's dropped a couple of game 2s so far at home in this playoffs. And so they are capable of losing any game at home, which is kind of sad to say about a team that's, obviously championship material. But I think there's this sort of natural exhale that happens potentially if you're the Pacers. Like, not only did they go on the road and have a historic shooting game and win, but, the idea of doing that again on the road against a better team, it's just like, you expect that even less than you would expect on a game 7. And so you just not necessarily let go of the rope, but if they don't make their first, 3 or 4 or 5 3-pointers, and all of a sudden it's one of those classic, hey, Boston jumps out to a 10-point lead. I think that's just one of those where you're going to see Boston just run away with it because Indiana just doesn't have the energy to maintain it because you're just going to have to against Boston. Like, you're going to, for 4 quarters, you're going to have to maintain all of that energy and effort and maintain that shooting in order to keep up with them. So I don't think this is the game. But like I said, in those previous 2 series, Boston just fell asleep in game 2. And I think that's possible again.
Let's say Boston gets through this series. Before we get to what's going to happen in the West, how would Boston fare against either of those teams?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think Minnesota I think that both give them problems just on different ends. I think Minnesota defensively would really make life difficult for Tatum and Brown. Like, I could imagine Jaylen Brown averaging 6 turnovers in that series, given the way he sort of fumbles the ball in traffic, especially when he's going left. I could see Jason Tatum getting wildly frustrated. And you know what? This is the first time I've thought about each of these playing against Boston. So as I talk this out, I'm going to go ahead and say that I think Minnesota will give them more problems. But that same sort of feel that I get with Minnesota's length being able to bother Boston, I still think that can happen with Dallas. I think Gafford and Lively and some of those guys, DJJ, Derrick Jones Jr., can really make life difficult for Boston in those wings as well. So it's going to take somebody like a Derek White to just surprisingly dominate a game. It's going to take, if they get him back, a Porzingis to really be a crazy mismatch person to sort of get those bigs out of the paint. But I think, if you were to ask me just which of those teams is, based on what they've done this postseason and their history, is best suited to beat Boston, I would say that frantic Minnesota defense is probably more difficult to overcome than, the offense of Luka.
What do you make of how that Minnesota-Denver series went? Like, I went into the game. It was a horrible series, there was never a greater point differential through 6 games than there was Minnesota and Denver. And it certainly looked like, when the score's 58-38 early in the 3rd quarter, this is a terrible, terrible series. And then we got just a shocker of a second half there. What do you make of the way that series ended?
So when Minnesota was up 2-0, everybody was saying, hey, the series is over. It's probably going to be a sweep. You go back and check the Around the Horn tapes. I did not. I thought that Denver would come back, and, they did. They tied the series and then took it to 7. And it was just a matter of, like, game 7's difficult. Which secondary force would be the difference maker? And by that, I mean, you knew Nikola was going to do his thing. So you knew that Denver offense, for the most part, at least around him, was going to be effective. You knew that Minnesota defense was going to do their thing. Would Anthony Edwards have a big game? He had an inefficient game. So it had to be that defense and that rebounding and that size. And that's what happened. And I think, Denver figured out how to deal with a lot of the the defenses and the doubling, but they didn't figure out how to deal with a tired Nikola Jokic and getting all those offensive rebounds that Minnesota was getting. And so it was a classic series where they just it was just a heavyweight battle where they were just taking advantage of the other team's lack of the weakness, the other team's weakness, and just finding it. It's just a perfect series, finding it from game to game and taking advantage of it. And then down the stretch, it was just Denver had nothing left. Like, it's not like Minnesota came out there and shot the lights out down the stretch. Denver had nothing left. And so I think you can't, like, if you're Denver, even the way Jokic talked about it after the series, he's just had wild respect for them. It's like, they were built to beat us. Look at that defense. Like, that was a great team. And I think it's just one of those situations where it felt like the winner of that series was going to come out of the West. I still give Luka and Kyrie a chance just because they're so wildly talented, but it felt like that was a battle for the best team in the West.
Now, I love on ESPN.com when the analysts get the expert picks. I love the expert picks. Have you done your expert picks yet for the East and Western finals? I imagine those are getting published at some point today because it's starting tonight.
Should be. They should be published today. I think I turned in my answers yesterday. I was really close to what Greg Cody would call a super zigacto with my second round picks because I had Mavericks in 6, nailed it. I had Celtics in 5, nailed it. And then I had Knicks and Nuggets both in 7. So I was going into this game 7 saying, wow, I could get this absolutely right. And instead, of course, I jinxed myself and they both lose. But, I was on it in those series because at least I got the number of games right in every single one. I would say, for this series, my picks were same amount of games. I just talked myself into saying that last series felt like it was the series that was going to come out, or the team that was going to come out of the West. But I picked Mavericks in 6. Mavericks in 6. And to me, it was more of a, hey, and this is the other side of the argument. Which of these stars are more tested and more capable of carrying his team to the finals, whether it be Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns, or is it Luka and Kyrie? And that to me is an easy argument. Like, I love Anthony Edwards, but he could still have a 6 for 24 stinker. And then it's not often that Cat's going to say, hey, jump on my shoulders. I got you. The other way around, I believe it more possible. Luka maybe not having a great game and Kyrie being able to carry them. So I've given you both sides of the argument. My official pick is Mavericks in 6, but I wouldn't be shocked whatsoever if that T-Wolves defense comes out of the West.
And what was the other one? What'd you give in the East?
Celtics in 6. And they asked to pick MVPs. So in the Western Conference, I picked Luka because if Mavericks make it, he's obviously going to give you a triple-double average. And then I picked Derek White for the Celtics because I think it's a little bit of whether it be this series or whether it be in the finals, if and when they get there, it's a little bit of an Andre Iguodala situation. I don't think Tatum hasn't had to have a 30-point series. Jalen hasn't had to have a 30-point series. If Derek White comes in and averages 25 and 5 and just plays lockdown defense on, some pretty important players for the Indiana Pacers, Tyrese Halliburton, then I think he will end up potentially being the MVP.
Very tough for that kind of player to get it. Remember, Caleb Martin should have won it last year, and they still gave it to Jimmy Butler.
No, I think people are saying that as fact. It's not fact. Like, I think a lot of people say Caleb Williams had an argument for Eastern Conference, but I don't think he should have won it. I think it was Jimmy Butler's who won.
All right. Hey, are you into the Florida Panthers and everything going on right now?
You see this little bit of facial hair on my chin? This is my playoff beard, my man. This should be all the answer you need for how much I'm into this hockey run. It's only lasting for as long as the Panthers are in, and not to tell anybody how to think, but you can't shame playoff beards. This is what I can grow comfortably. You don't want to see all this. It just gets out of control. And so, yeah, this is my playoff beard. So your answer is yes.
All right, you're way into it. I brought this up on yesterday's show briefly. Alexander Barkov just won the Selke Award for the second time in his career, which goes to the best two-way player, best defensive forward in the National Hockey League. And the reality of it is this guy, like it's about time, and it's because it's hockey. I get it, but it's about time we talk about this guy down here as one of the all-time great South Florida sports figures. He is.
He is, and I think part of the problem is A, we don't really know how to talk about hockey, and B, we don't want to talk about hockey unless they're winning. And so, since Barkey's been here, we've had one great regular season that didn't end up into anything, and then basically these last 2 years have been really building up this fan base and really carrying South Florida. And I think if it just so happens that he's getting this attention, I guess he's won it before, but getting attention again at just the right time, then I think you sort of look at the big picture and say, hey, probably overlooked him and recognize what it takes to win at the high level of the NHL. And now the Panthers have finally figured out, got the right coach, right, et cetera. And just like when you've got, Matthew Tkachuk saying he's the best player in the world right now, it's like, I don't know if that's true or not, if it's a teammate gassing him up, but I like to hear it. And I will then sort of assess that as I watch him play from here on out. But there's times like he uses his, body to fend off defenders while he's just, heading toward the net and just somehow handles the puck the entire time. It's just, as an NBA guy, like it's just crazy impressive. It just reminds me of man, I can't even think of a player that is like that, but it just reminds me of somebody that's just full control of the game. And as a sort of budding hockey fan, you watch it and you just grow, you have a growing appreciation for it. Like I could see what Matthew Tkachuk does well. I can see sort of Reinhardt, his spots and how he can hunt those goals. It's taken a while to really appreciate what Alexander Barkov does. But I think, especially after the second award that he's won, that I think most people, at least locally, are forced to say, hey, this guy's been great for a long time, and I should figure out why.
I mean, I bring it up to guys, like, for instance, a few days ago when I was on ESPN, we had PK Subban on the show. And so I said to PK, how is Sasha Barkov recognized nationally? Because does he? I think I phrased it in some fashion of this feels like kind of a coming out for him because he's having a phenomenal postseason. And PK responds to me with, I imagine the way that a lot of national people respond, which is, you're nuts if you don't think he's already one of the greatest players in the world. Like, we all know this. It seems like only us down here aren't so, and I don't mean me, I don't mean necessarily you, but it's like, sure, we're the only ones down here who don't know he is regarded as one of the best players in the entire league.
It's almost, it's kind of similar to a Jimmy Butler situation. Not to say that the rest of the country thought Jimmy Butler could be, a number one superstar for a team that, can reach the finals. But Jimmy had to come down here and show us that he could do that. And so Barkey's basically like, he's been showing us, and like the national media has recognized it. And I say national, and I just mean, the pockets of the country and then Canada that are really into hockey, because, you're not going to go into Northern California and have a bunch of people talking up Sasha Barkov. But I think for the real hockey enthusiasts, and frankly, like, it's one of those deals where I've sort of become, fans of teams in different ways. I've never really become a fan of a team that I'm sort of learning why they're good as I'm watching them. And so this has been kind of that experience for me as a, relatively green hockey fan. And I could imagine that for those who have been really liking the sport and have been diehards down here, it must feel great. Like, there's that sort of contrast where, hey, you don't let the bandwagon fans join. I don't really think that's a thing. I think you want as many bandwagon fans as you can get, and just sort of grow the embrace and just make the fan base even more intimidating.
I love explaining. Now I do with my younger son a lot, but you could do it with friends as well who are just catching on. I love explaining the nuances of the game while we're watching the game, because there's so many little things that are happening. What all the lines mean on the ice, like everything that is going on there. There's no sport like it. It's so fun when you.
There's no sport
what's going on
where, like, you're picking. So it's hard to. So a lot of things you just mentioned a handful of things, the nuances of the game, right? Figuring out those nuances of the game just in the playing, right? Just in the activity on the ice. And then the next level is recognizing the lines and recognizing who's playing with who and who's playing well with who. And that's a lot to keep up with because you're like, you're following the puck, but you got to pay attention to the numbers. You got to pay attention to who's what. And I used to say that it's really easy to check out of watching a hockey game. And now it's very difficult to check out because the second you do, you sort of lose track of what's going well and what's not. And so you sort of force yourself to, like, there's been times in other playoff games this season where I've had, the hockey game, it's not Panthers, of course, on a small TV, no sound. Last night I had to watch big TV with sound because it's a totally different experience. And yeah, especially when you're somebody like me who's not as experienced and can't sit there and watch it on mute and tell you everything that's happening. I need a little bit of assistance.
Well, and think about this. Like, imagine the coach behind the bench who is matching up lines where he has to see what line is on the ice in real time. Not like before a face-off, but, they just went on the ice. Okay, this line, you're next. And matching it up in real time, it's crazy.
Yeah, and unless you're Boston, doing it without too many men on the ice. They did that all the time.
Seven?
It's a record.
Yeah. Israel, what are we watching these days? Have you finished Netflix yet? Or you still got some more shows?
Have I finished Netflix? I've still got some Netflix left. I just finished the first half of the new season of Bridgerton, which, I mean, the halves of seasons, like, just wait. What do you think about that, by the way? Are you a fan of the old school ways of waiting a week to watch a show, or do you want to binge immediately? Because I'm kind of on the fence on that. I like the idea of waiting some, like old school, but I also hate the fact that if you're watching too many things, sometimes you sort of forget and you got to like catch up. It's a bit much. So I'm kind of a fan of binging right now.
I like having it at my discretion. And what I mean by that is I have self-control. So if I have all 10 episodes this season, I'm not necessarily going to sit through and bang out all of them. I like knowing I have it in the back pocket. So
I'm with you.
I got something cool like a watch in a few days.
But when it's 2 in the morning, Zaz, I don't care how good the last episode ended. You got to stop. You got to stop. You got another day to have, right? That's one of those where that's how they get you.
Yeah, I want to have something to look forward to. I don't want it to end yet. So
exactly.
I have self-control. So I like having it at my disposal, and I'll watch whenever I want. What else?
But I will give you one answer. Oh, I'm sorry. I was watching, and I highly recommend it because it's based on a true story. It's Under the Bridge on Hulu.
What is that?
It's a story about a group of girls in a Canadian community who just I guess they're part of like a little gang or whatever, and just spoilers, beat up a girl and then killed a girl. And so it's just all the to do around that, who did it, why they did it, etc. And sort of a picture of I would say a broken community that nobody really recognized. But yeah, I would say it's very, very good. And right now, that's probably the best thing I could recommend.
Are you watching X-Men 97?
Not again. Because are they putting out new episodes or is it just the old ones?
No, it's a whole new series.
Oh, no, I'm not watching that. I'm sticking with the childhood memories of that show.
No, that one ended in like 96. So this one is X-Men 97. No, it's all new. And the 10th and final episode of the season came out last week.
I've been an adult since 95, so I think I'm good on the cartoon series.
All right,
I'm just messing with you.
No. It's interesting that you say that because I've had it highly recommended to me. I'm halfway through it. I think I watched episode 5 yesterday. Like I said, at my discretion, I'm not going to bang through all of them. I want to watch it at my leisure, okay? And because it's getting rave reviews, just incredible series, okay? And I'm about halfway through it. But my hesitance with it, and I struggle a little bit with it while watching it. I'm an adult. Like, I have a hard time getting super invested in cartoons. Like, for instance, I know how amazing The Simpsons is. Anytime The Simpsons is on my television, this show is awesome. I love it. But I've never been someone to sit and watch The Simpsons every single week because it's a cartoon. And I have a hard time getting invested in cartoons.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think I'm somewhat or have been somewhat invested in some cartoons or some animated shows, but they're not cartoons. Like BoJack Horseman is not meant for kids. Big Mouth, even though it's about kids, is not meant for kids. So those types of cartoons or animated series I'm in on, but the ones that are made for teenagers, preteens, or whatever, yeah, it's going to be tough. I'd rather watch Boss Baby and think, hey, Alec Baldwin must have had fun doing that voice.
Israel, when are we going to see you on TV again next?
Today would be great if you guys tune into Around the Horn.
Okay.
Be a good time to catch me.
You need any help with what your FaceTime speech would be? What you would dedicate it to?
I would love some suggestions. You got anything in mind?
I mean, you could mention ZASLOW Show 2.0.
What could I say that you offered me during this chat that I can then bring up? Because I can't just flatly say, hey, I'm going to use my 30 seconds to promote my buddy ZASLOW.
Just say, listen, I had a great time chopping it up with ZASLOW. I don't know. You'll figure it out. You're a wordsmith.
What's your favorite Florida Panthers nugget going into these Eastern Conference Finals? Okay. Something I can borrow. Could be about Barkey. Could be about anybody.
Why don't you say how I used that the Panther fan has never had a bigger turnaround as far as how they feel about their coach.
That's a good one.
I was calling Paul Maurice last year the murderer of fun, and now I love him. That's my coach.
What about Barkey? Didn't you want to trade him too?
I traded him when they were down 3-1 to Boston last year.
Last year, okay.
Yeah. And now
right.
I think he's on a pedestal right next to Wade and Marino. I mean, yeah, there you go.
All right, you know what? There's a decent chance that if I win, that's going to be my FaceTime. I put it above 50% chance. Now, if I win, that's a whole 25% chance. But if I win, I'm going there with it. And I would say better than 80% chance that you get name dropped.
Oh, I'm going to be watching Around the Horn. I got something on the line today.
All right. Now, if I don't get to the last segment, you can just cut the show off right there.
Yeah, no, obviously. All right. Great job, Israel. Thanks for hanging out, man.
Thank you, Zaz. Anytime.